Okay, holding mics, or do you want mics in a stand?
Holding them, yeah, so
Okay.
you got one and you grab the other one. That's. Logistics, okay.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My apologies for the tech problems, delays to get us started. We know you came here to learn about protecting yourselves from fraud and scams today. We are broadcasting to the rooms, and they've given us permission that we're going to record it. So if a neighbor is unable to attend, or if you want to go back and review what is shared today, that will be on the CSJ YouTube channel, so you can watch that as well. But with that, I'll let Joan do the formal welcomes, and thank you for coming this morning.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. We have a special surprise and gift. Our former councilperson, Chris Tolbert, is now employed at Commissioner Choi's office and is going to be a part of our presentation this morning. So Commissioner John Choi, who's been with us several times, and Chris Colbert was with us many times as city council person. So welcome to the two of you. We are very, very eager to hear your presentation.
Well, good morning, everybody. And I'll get really close. Thank you for that reminder. And sometimes I kind of do this, so just do that, okay? And I'll be reminded. But I'm so glad to be back here again, Joan. Thank you so much for the invitation. And it's so great to be here with your former city council member, Chris Tolbert, who joined our office about 3 or 4 months ago. And he serves as my executive officer. And so we're working on some of those big projects, and we also are doing a lot of speaking to community. And so oftentimes Chris is going to be joining me, helping me putting stuff together. And so today, I understand that Joan had asked us to come and present to you about fraud that happens in our community. And most importantly, what we can do to answer any questions about how we can help prevent it, right? So I think the first thing that is really, really important, I've been in this role now as county attorney for a long time now. It's 2011 is when I first started. And so I've been in this role for a long time. And so what I have the privilege of being able to do is to run the county attorney's office, to serve the public, to try to work on better solutions and outcomes. But I also see a lot of tragedy and things that just break your heart, when parents don't parent their children, and then the government has to intervene and move kids into foster home or remove their parental rights, or when people get killed. But I also see a lot of tragedy in people who are victimized, especially in the context of if you're vulnerable. There are predators out there who take advantage of you from a financial standpoint. It could also be physical abuse. It could be sexual abuse. But I see that, and it oftentimes breaks my heart. But one of the things that I've come to believe and realize is that oftentimes when people do get victimized, I know that many times what victims feel is a sense of shame. That somehow it was their fault. And it was actually the fault of the bad person, the perpetrator. And I've also come to understand that how we support victims as best as possible is when something happens to somebody. Yes. Oh, yeah. Where is the camera? Oh, okay. Thank you. So, but when I know when something bad happens to somebody, whether it's being a victim of some sort of abuse or some exploitation, or you've been taken advantage of financially, the most important thing is how people that love that person, how a community responds to that person who has been harmed. That we support them, that we believe them, and that we remove those barriers of shame. Because I've talked to so many people, especially seniors, who have been taken advantage of because of some of the schemes that we're going to talk about. And the first thing that happens to them is that they feel this sense of shame, that somehow it was their fault. And I just want to be able to say here today that it's not. This happens frequently all over our country and every day. But what matters is how we as a community, how we as brothers and sisters and family respond to support those victims so that they're not feeling that shame, and that we report these things to authorities, because the more reporting there is, we can better understand what's going on and try to do something. Now, the sad thing about some of these financial schemes is that a lot of these things are happening from overseas, and it's very difficult for our law enforcement to be able to intervene, but they do try their best, and sometimes they are able to save people's money, or they're able to bring people to justice. So that reporting is important, but oftentimes I think people who are harmed, they don't report because they're worried about like the embarrassment and the shame and all of that. And so I think as a community, as a Carondelet community, everything that you can do to be supportive to those people who are being harmed, and please hear me as your county attorney, that there is no shame in being a victim of crime. And what's most important is that we have a system in a community that's going to respond appropriately. So with that, I think we're going to go into some of the schemes that we'll talk about a few things, but more importantly, we'll bring the microphone around, and I think we can answer questions that you might have. But again, all of these things are happening in our community, and they happen very frequently. So if this ever happens to you, hopefully this presentation can help you better be prepared to identify whether or not something is not real or fake.
Yeah, thank you very much. Great to be here as well. We are going to go through a few things and some examples, and I think what County Attorney Choi said about the shame or people not reporting it or being embarrassed to report it. One thing that hit home to me is about a year ago, the New York Times had a really good piece by this reporter who had fallen for a scam herself. And when she recounted it, she told the entire story. It went on for months and months at a time. And when she recounted it, she said, she almost laughed. It was unbelievable the stuff I was doing and the stuff that I was thinking was happening. But in today's world, things are so sophisticated. And as John said, it's coming from overseas, and technology is making things look very legitimate. I know for myself, when I bought a house about 3 years ago, afterwards, I got all these notices about a mortgage. Your mortgage, open up, open up, open up. And there are things like that that people are just trying to prey on them. And so what we're gonna do in our presentation is try and talk about some of those things to watch out for and best practices to look at it. So these are a few of the different types of scams. People in here might have heard of romance scams. That's oftentimes with online relationships. It can happen with started in-person relationships as well, but I think most often in our office, we see ones that start online from out of state or out of the country, where people become good friends, and over time, that relationship escalates and money starts being exchanged.
And this is where I think people that love family members and friends and a community can really be helpful, because oftentimes somebody might be coming into somebody's life that you might know, and you should just be, if there's certain indicia, to be skeptical and to try to engage your friend about thinking through all of that. I think that's really important, because oftentimes what these individuals are doing is they're preying on people's vulnerability. So maybe you're lonely, you're seeking companionship, all of those things. There are people that are out there who are preying on that. And so we had a case involving a woman who was probably in her 60s, and she got caught up with some other person about the same age, but he was a fraudster, and he had other relationships going on across the United States, and basically took her for all of her money. And they took a lot of lavish trips, things like that. He romanced her, and then As it turned out, he was a phony. And he stole all of our money. We did prosecute him, and this was about 8 years ago.
Yeah, so if you are having these relationships and people start asking for money, I think that's when hopefully your radar goes up, or as County Attorney Choi said, your friend's radar should go up for you when those conversations happen. Another one is lottery or sweepstakes scams. I think these ones are a little bit more, I'll call them old school. Used to get them in the mail more, but they are getting more sophisticated nowadays where people are doing it by text or email.
And just remember, if you didn't enter the lottery or the sweepstakes, and they told you that you won, you didn't win, okay?
So those are ones to watch out for. Tech support scams, those often happen on your computer, on your phone. You go to a website and all of a sudden it pops up. If you don't click this button, you're going to lose all your information or some other threat. And it can be jarring because your whole computer screen is taken over. Oftentimes those are phishing scams or things like that. If you have a phone, the best practice that I've heard is to continue to restart your phone daily. That gets rid of a lot of those scams that might attach because you've gone to a website or something like that.
And the next one, this is very common. It's happening a lot, especially around tax time. So around April, we see this happen a lot more and right after you file your taxes. But you will get a phone call and someone will impersonate being a part of the IRS or the federal government and telling you that you owe taxes. And if you don't take care of this immediately, there will be a warrant issued out for your arrest. But it sounds really real. In fact, my wife almost fell for it because she called me up and said, "Do we owe taxes?" And I said, "No, of course not. We paid them." So it's just, but the way that they come at you, right? In fact, the caller ID actually was the San Francisco IRS office. But that's what they're doing. And so believe me, the IRS will never call you. They will send you a notice that you didn't pay taxes. They're not, and it'll be in paper. It won't be a phone call, and they'll never be demanding payment by credit card right now. In fact, most people who owe taxes, will work out with the IRS a payment plan or something like that. So that's not the norm where they would be calling you. But this is one that's very, very frequent. I should go back up to romance scams just in the context of like family. Another one is the grandparent scam. I don't know if you're aware of this one. This one was kind of an older scheme. I think people have caught on to it. But they'll just take a guess. They'll look through there's a lot of information on the World Wide Web. So if you just Googled your name and wrote white pages after it, what you would find is probably yourself, and you would probably find your family members as well. And so they might, through that, understand that somehow you might have a grandson or a granddaughter named Amanda. And so what they'll do is they'll just they're just going to see if something sticks. And they'll say, Amanda will call and say, but it's not Amanda. She'll say that I'm down in Mexico and I'm in trouble, and I need you to wire me some money. That's probably not going to work 999 times out of 1,000, but it will work for maybe one time out of 1,000, and that's what they're hoping for. And so they have these schemes, and again, these are being run outside of this country. They're being run from like a call center somewhere.
Yeah, and then the vehicle escrow scam, that's similar to some of the other ones that we've talked to. It's where the official documentation comes in either from your bank or a fake DMV type of mailing, where it's trying to bring fear into you that you owe money or something bad's going to happen. And similar to what I was talking about with all the mortgage scams that I got right after I took out a new mortgage a couple years ago. And then lastly, on this slide is the phishing texts and emails. This is the one that I think is probably the most prevalent now. I don't know about you, but I get a lot of random texts that I don't know. The one that I've heard most recently that we're seeing out there is people saying, "Oh, I'm going to be late for dinner," or something like that, something to that effect, where it seems very personal. And this one, I think, is often coming from hackers internationally, where they're trying to get people to click on a link or start a conversation. And as John said, there's a lot about us on the internet now, whether it's via Facebook, Instagram, or just by Google. And people can sometimes get information about you as well.
Yeah, and those, and I get those too, these phishing texts, it'll just be like, "Hey, Uncle John, how are you doing?" They're just throwing the stuff out there, but they do actually know who your name is, and they're trying to verify whether or not your cell phone is real. And the hope is that you're going to respond. So when you get those texts, just don't respond. But if you did respond, it's probably okay too, is they're just trying to see if it's a valid cell phone, and as long as you didn't take it further, you'll be fine. But that's one of the tactics that they're doing right now to kind of figure out who has real cell phones and then connecting names, and then it's for probably a later scam down the road. But that's a lot of that is happening right now.
Yeah, and a lot of these, just delete them if you can. If you don't know it, or if it's a weird area code where you're like, I don't know somebody who lives in Maine, something like that, just delete them. And one thing that I do personally is for example, the Pioneer Press was calling me all the time because I'd gotten a new credit card and I forgot to update that one. But I was getting all these calls from numbers that I didn't know. So I answered one and they said, "You owe money. This is the Pioneer Press. Your credit card is no longer active." And so what I did is I said, "Thank you very much." I hung up the phone. I went to the Pioneer Press website, looked up their phone number, and called in. And that's what I often do with my bank as well. And I think that's a good practice that people can have. If it's a company or something that you know, just hang up, look up the real number, call them, and they'll connect you to the right person again. And I think that's a very safe thing to do.
Yeah, and in fact, in the context of emails, with the way that some of these scams are working, is that they will create an email that will look just like your bank. But just remember, your bank is never, ever going to be asking you for this type of information, your personal social security number, asking you for payment or credit card. In fact, as Chris just said, instead of responding to the email, just call your bank, not based upon what the number is there, but just you have the number for your bank and say, are you trying to reach me? And the answer will be no. Any question? We should just, maybe we should just pause. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Social Security on that list. There's a lot of changes going on Social Security. I'm getting a lot of emails that say, you should set up an account, that type of thing. Have you seen any activity in that area?
I haven't, but that would be a good one too. I mean, if you're trying to get someone's Social Security number, you should pose to be a Social Security government agent asking you to update something, because you won't get Social Security if you don't do it. So just be aware. Yeah, that's a common one in the context of like the government impersonation, right? What they want is your Social Security number.
Just wondering, if this happens to us, should we be calling your office? What level does it need to get to call to your office? Because I haven't caught the romance scam, but the other one's talking to family members and personally myself. Do I call?
Well, so we are not an investigative agency, so we don't have investigators to go out. But I do think that we have some, on the future slides, we have some places where you can report these things. If you think it's if you're worried that someone else is going to get taken advantage of, right? Then there are ways that you can report those things. And of course, if you are victimized in any way, right, then reporting that to the police is really, really important. The local police, right? Yep, and filling out, and they'll probably ask you to fill out an online report. But getting that information into the system is really helpful.
And yeah, for those who have printed copies, and I apologize, I should have printed out more. I should have known the crowd was going to be big, but we can email this over as well. But later in the slide deck, there are contact numbers. The Department of Commerce has a lot of good information on their website. Most of those contact numbers, actually, those numbers are from the Department of Commerce. I talked to them about their fraud presentation, and they had compiled that. So it will be on there, but we can also email it out to folks.
So I'm going to ask you a question about, I was scammed and it happened, I was looking through my email and this pop-up came saying, you've been hacked. Your account, financial account has been hacked twice, one for 15,000 and one for 20-some thousand. Would you like us to help you with this? It was Apple. And I said, yes, I trust Apple. And they said, well, call this number. So I called that number and they said, okay, we can help you if you really want us to help you. And I said, yes, I really want you to. And they said, do you bank at, was it Chase or American Bank? And I said, no. Well, you need to go to your bank. Or you need to call your bank. Where do you bank? And I said, it's a private bank in St. Paul. Well, we will accompany you there. We will go. You put your phone in your purse and we will direct you. So I went to the bank. They said, now when you get out into the parking lot, stop and we will give you further directions. So I got into the parking lot and I stopped and I said, okay. They said, go in and ask for the withdrawal from your account of 15,000. I said, not the full amount, because I was really innocent and didn't understand. And they said, no, just the 15,000 at this point. And if they ask you, what are you going to do with this money? Say, it's just for household goods. And so I went in, I withdrew the money. I asked the clerk to withdraw the money. And she said, and what are you going to do with this money? And I said, it's just for household goods. And she said, well, just a minute, I will check with my colleague. And the colleague came back and she said, and what are you going to do with this money? And I said, for household goods. And as I said this, she voiced with her lips, she said, it is a scam. And I couldn't believe it. And I was reduced to tears. I was sobbing. And she said, it's okay, it's okay. And she took me into her office and helped me understand that this was their way of, victimizing me. But my question was, and I thank the Lord for that, she was an angel, and I trust that bank totally now because it's a smaller bank and they know me and they will look out for me. But not everybody has that privilege. And my question is, Apple, why does Apple allow this to happen? And you have to go to Apple. You can't call Apple about verification. So if you're without driving skills or in here and can't drive, how do you address this?
Well, I think if Apple was aware that their logo was being used, they would take measures to try to stop it. And I'm so glad that, because I think a lot of banks are taking responsibility and they're trying to help their clients and their customers. So I'm so glad that, first of all, that you had somebody, a bank. Yes, well, that's good to know. Yeah. But it's so great that that was stopped. And I'm sure that that bank probably did something to report that potential thing. But in that whole context, that's like where these scams are getting so sophisticated. And I think maybe one thing that we can all do as a community is, you all live in this building, you have people that care about you, is that it's okay to like ask other people about these things, right? Talk about it. Like before you take some measure like that, ask somebody else, a friend, and then maybe that friend can say, well, I think maybe that's a scam or something like that. But I think the networks that you have is a great preventative tool. So rely on each other, because I think as strong as our community is, that's how we help each other, right? And when we have a lot of people looking out for one another, we can prevent bad things from happening to our loved ones.
My email contact list was scammed and they sent, out an email to everybody on it. And it said, do you do Venmo? Do you do Zelle? Do you buy from Amazon? And that was it. And so I got like 90 phone calls from people and then some people called other people instead of me. Is it a good idea to change my email? I mean, I worked with Verizon, Apple, and Comcast or Xfinity for like 3 days to straighten it out. But I'm right in the middle of working on a big reunion and I've sent my email out to all these people and I think, should I change it? I mean, is it smart? I don't really know, what would be the proper thing to do.
You have insight on that?
I think the conversation with your email server would be the best on what they would recommend, but I would just be careful about any links that you get, or emails that you get if you do believe it's hacked. And then also don't put any financial information into that email account, if you think it's compromised. So just be I mean, I think the reunion's at noon on July 20th is probably fine, but don't put your bank account in there or other important information like social security numbers.
Okay. Joan says we need to go on. So we'll pause again for more questions too.
So these are just some of the tactics that they use. And I think we've kind of talked about a lot of them in part of these. And thank you for sharing your story. Kind of hit some of these in your story. And the story that you shared actually is almost identical to the New York Times story that I mentioned at the start of this presentation. The same type of thing of go to your bank now, pull out your money, and people taking advantage of us being good people, of us having empathy and us caring and us trusting people. And it's not to say that we shouldn't trust people, but let's verify those things with the official channels. So, yeah, I think we talked about
Yeah,
most of these.
we did.
These are some additional tips. Don't share your personal and financial information unless you're absolutely sure. And that's back to the case of if someone calls from your bank, say, okay, I'll check into it and call the bank back or go on if you can. Because as we know, they are doing a good job.
Yeah, and it's completely okay to hang up on people. And it's completely okay to ignore people's emails and texts if you don't love them, right? If it's your family texting you, you should probably return that text or return their call, right? But if it's like a number that you don't recognize, you don't have to answer the phone. You don't have to return that call if you don't know who this person is. I think sometimes in our trying to be conscientious and just having all this technology, I think our levels of stress can increase by just having this need just to be responsive, right? Because we just want to be human, right? But just remember, you can hang up on people that you don't love, and you could ignore emails and texts of people that you don't love, okay?
And then these are just some tips, and this is from the Department of Commerce, so I just to give them credit. They have a lot of this on their website. They're really the department that focuses on fraud. Oops. But just basic rules: never send personal information by email or phone. Never wire money or give cash or send a gift to someone you haven't met in person. I think sometimes you can meet people in person and then find out they're scams, as County Attorney Choi mentioned earlier. Never answer the phone if you don't recognize the phone number. And then back up to things you should do. Verify who you're communicating with. Safely store and shred all sensitive documents. That's another thing there. And then never trust phone numbers or links provided.
Another way to deal with this, if somebody's calling you and it does seem kind of legitimate, is just say, well, I would like to call you back. Can you give me a number? What's your name? And then just call them back, right? And then you call them back and it still seems kind of like important, but it's not, there's something about it that seems weird. Then say, I'll call you back later. I'm busy right now. And then talk to a friend and see what's going on. But again, no big consequence can come to you. Nobody can take, no, if you really did owe taxes, that's a long process, right? And you're going to get notices in the mail, et cetera. If you owe some back taxes or whatever it might be, just remember it doesn't, none of this has to be immediate, okay? And again, you can hang up the phone on people you don't love.
And one more thing is, if you've called your bank and they want to, talk to you, they make you go through an identification process. If the caller doesn't make you go through that, one, if they call you, I would always call them back. I think that's just a general good practice. But when you call them, you notice that they say, what was your first pet's name or whatever the security question is. And they will do that because the banks are really, I would say, probably the best defenders against a lot of this financial fraud out there. And sometimes they can be overzealous. I know they've shut off my credit card and I had to call them back. No, I really am traveling right now. So, but thank you for protecting me. So
We have a question here.
I've had a number of medical appointments in recent months and thanks, Marty. And I often get calls from nurses. I don't know if they're calling me on their personal phone or some other phone. So I tend to answer the phone, but without telling them my name. And then let them say, is this so-and-so? But I just wonder about the suggestion of don't answer the phone.
I think we were just saying that you don't have to answer the phone if you don't want to, because they'll leave a message if it's really important, right? But some people like to answer the phone, right? Because we want to be responsive. But I think the key is that when you're having that conversation, if they're asking you for personal information or things like that, you just don't want to provide that and say, I'd like to call you back.
If you're up to it, we got about 3 questions in the back and 1 in the front here, so.
And just while you people are looking, this is one of the 2 slides that has really good contact information. And like I said, we can get this over here and people can print it off, these couple pages here. They're from the Department of Commerce.
And just quickly, for those that didn't get the handout, I can print this copy and leave it on the Justice Resource table for sure for anyone who wants to pick it up.
I'm just following up on the Social Security comment earlier. Both Jim and I have gotten emails to create a different account on Social Security. And it looks very legitimate to me. You can no longer get through with Social Security My Account, but have to create a login.gov account. Like I said, it looks legit. I'm afraid to go ahead and do this. Of course, I can't call Social Security. I can't get through anyway to confirm that it is real or legitimate. Do you know anything about that part?
I don't, but if you have some information about that, maybe we could try to connect you to somebody at the Department of Commerce or some organization, because if this is happening to you, it's probably happening to other people, and I'm very aware about the challenges that people have had connecting with the Social Security office, which is such an important thing for people that are older, and they just can't get through or can't get a human being. So maybe if there's a way, Marty, if we can get connected, we can try to get to the bottom of that one, because that seems like, if you think about it, it's the perfect time to do this type of scam, where there are people that can't talk to a live person because there's nobody that's working there anymore, or there's less people, right? And yeah, so I'd be interested in trying to understand a little bit more and maybe trying to connect you to an agency that could help you figure out whether or not that's real or not.
One other thing with federal is Congresswoman McCollum, who represents this area, Senator Smith, and Senator Klobuchar all have really good constituent outreach teams. And if you contact their local office, their staff can also help you with the federal questions of this is legit and this isn't. So,
in fact, that's a great suggestion. is calling Congresswoman McCollum's office, because I'm sure that they would have that federal interest, you know?
First, a comment, that Apple scam was obviously very sophisticated. Another woman here that I know was very smart, fell for it as well, right up to the point of going to the bank. But then the question for Chris, you said refresh your phones daily is a good idea. Can you tell us real quickly how you do that?
Yeah, so I have an iPhone. I don't know what other people have. But if you just turn it off and turn it back on, that restarts it and refreshes. And what I've read, that's one of the best ways just to get rid of simple viruses or anything that might attach to your phone for visiting websites.
This is a related question, I think, to scam. About 2 months ago, I was at my computer. I was sending an email message to a group of people to tell them about a training session that a local organization was, a local immigrant rights organization was doing to prepare people for protecting immigrants from ICE raids and arrest. And while I was sending this message, a message took over my screen, which was very intimidating. I wish I'd written down exactly what it was, but I felt like the message was, you are being watched and monitored, or the site that you are referring to, the organization that you are referring to is being monitored and watched. And I felt like this was probably coming from somewhere in the government. But I don't know, I felt quite intimidated by this, and I wonder if you would comment on that.
I don't know much about, I haven't heard anything about that. And I'm just trying to understand like what happened, like you got some notice that they gave you a notice that you were being monitored, or you?
It was language that suggested that I was being monitored in this communication to other people regarding this training that a local organization was inviting people to.
Well, there are.
I was sending an email, yes.
Okay.
I think on a lot of those, if it took over your screen, that's what would be called clickbait. And so they're trying to get you to click on a link or click on something to connect. And don't do that. Don't click on those links, especially on things like that. I think that's what you're talking about. If it took over your screen, yeah. Because I've seen that on things that are not, I've been on a website and it's not political, or it's not, doing something like that, and it takes over the screen.
And then just another comment would be too, is that I know that these are kind of times where things seem to be in flux about our democracy, but I do believe in laws and I do believe in the Constitution. And there are federal communications laws that prohibit the government from monitoring people's email communication without getting an appropriate warrant or without it being supported by some type of criminal activity. So keep that in mind as well, that those laws are in place and they've been in place for a long time. So like in that context, I am suspicious of like any thought that the government would be monitoring your emails without getting the proper things that they would have to do that. You'd have to be suspected of some sort of criminal activity, or the organization that you're dealing with is suspected of that.
Thank you for coming. What is the safest way? What is the safest way to answer your phone? I used to answer it with my family name. If it's my children, then I say hello, with their name. And if I don't know, I don't say anything at all. I just pick it up and wait. Is there a safe, uniform way to answer the phone that's recommended?
I don't know, this is what I do. I don't answer the phone if I don't know. I figure if it's really important, they're gonna leave a message, right? Really, I mean, I have a contact list. So again, the people I love or the people that I work with or things like that, they're all in my phone, so their name will pop up. Sometimes I even have pictures associated with their names and their contacts, so their picture will pop up. But if I don't know I don't recognize the phone number, I don't answer the phone. I just let it go at a voicemail. And then oh, okay, well, buy an answering machine. You can see if they answer it, or, you could, I guess if you want to answer your phone, I guess you can just be silent and see what they say. And then you'll notice if they're calling from a call center, they'll be silent too. Because you're not talking. And then, and you'll feel yeah, and then you know what? Just hang up the phone. Yeah. I think that sometimes we need permission to do that. It's okay to hang up the phone on people.
To use your family name when you pick up the phone?
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily give your name. You could just say hello. Yeah, just say hello or just remain silent if it's in the phone. Do you have caller ID?
What,
Oh, yeah. Because the caller ID nowadays will, it'll, if you have your landline through your, oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, okay. Okay, so.
what changes do you anticipate with AI?
Oh, well, that's why I think a lot of this is getting so much more complex, these schemes, because the power of AI is, it's gonna just exponentially increase. So like just try to remember when the first cell phones came out, or the first smartphones and just how quickly they evolved. I think you're gonna see the same thing with artificial intelligence and its application. And sadly, it'll be applied in good ways, but it'll also be applied in bad ways that I think it'll make committing fraud and taking advantage of people. Also, they'll have more tools.
I think this goes back to those general rules that we had of just don't give out personal information because the stuff is going to look more real and more real. Especially I don't know if you've seen some of the AI videos of famous people doing things that they obviously weren't doing. But things are going to look more real. So I'd say go back to those principles and just be more vigilant about it.
And phone a friend, right? Use your community in your network, your neighborhood here, and ask other people to help.
I'm John Dunlop. This is a related question about texting. I think many of us receive fundraising and solicitations by text. And if we don't want to continue to receive information from that source, it gives us the option of opting out. But opting out confirms that it's a valid number.
Right.
So is it best? Can it be best not to opt out, and best just to ignore it, or what's your suggestion?
I think writing stop isn't going to give any personal information that you don't have, but I generally just delete and block when I get those. Because I mean, say it's for a political candidate, as I said before, go to their website separately if you want to donate to them, because what they're trying to do is to get you to donate. And a lot of them are legit, but I wouldn't take the chance on it. So go to that candidate's website itself and give the donation if you want to donate.
Yeah, but I do think if it's a legitimate text that's like, let's say you signed up, like I actually did this recently. I signed up for Nike.com because I wanted to become a member so I could get free shipping. And I got my free shipping, but then these texts are just coming constantly and I don't buy that many tennis shoes. So I said, stop. And you know what? It stopped. So I don't get Nike texts anymore. I just signed up for it because I was trying to get that membership or whatever. And I must have clicked on, you can text me. And I regretted that because they were texting me every day about a sale on tennis shoes. Oh, okay. Well, you wanted to, but she's been patiently wanting to.
It's regarding healthcare. They have representatives that are supposed to call you, but you haven't put them in your contact list and that phone number. So it pops up as a phone number, but it doesn't say what department or what entity within theirs. So I've answered the call, and it is my facility trying to reach you. And that's the hard part. If you don't have it in your contact list, it won't identify it. And they tend to do that a lot. They call you to follow up, and it doesn't show up as a contact unless on another side of the system, it shows maybe they leave a message. And then sometimes it's not clear because it has just the first name of a person. And if they're not detailed enough, you don't know. So I'm wondering if you have to call that clinic or whatever and ask, do you know if someone within the clinic has been trying to reach you? But that's a very common one. They do a lot for medical.
Yeah, I would imagine that there's a lot of calls and reminders from healthcare providers, and this community needs that information. So I think it's just one of those balance things where, I think that's a great suggestion though. If you know somebody that you're working with, you can put them into your contact, so then you know that it's the clinic that's calling you. But also too, I guess you need this information. So again, I do think that people would leave you in voicemails if it's important. But at the same time, there's also nothing wrong with answering your phone as well. You have to be careful about that. And if it's a legitimate thing, I think they would get to the point. They were calling to remind you about your appointment tomorrow, right? Yeah, or they need something, yeah.
Maybe Chris, if you could go back to the slide with the suggestions of like what not to do, what not to give out, I've had a number of residents in the last couple of weeks tell me real stories where they've gone to the bank and it's at the bank that someone stops them, or at Walgreens. A resident who couldn't be here today said it was an email from their granddaughter saying, I need gift cards urgently for this. She went to Walgreens and it was several $100s worth of gift cards, and the cashier asked her, did you call your granddaughter? Why don't you just call her first and then we can get the gift cards? And she's standing there at the cash register and her granddaughter said it wasn't her, it was a scam.
And the other thing, because we've talked a lot about medical appointments, there is not a healthcare clinic organization that does not document everything that they do. So if you call the general number and say, did somebody call from here? They might ask, do you have an appointment coming up or something like that, to try and narrow it down. But they have it in their system that they called you or the information that you're going to be looking for. So I think that pressure to act kind of thing of, well, I need to answer this and I need to respond now and I need to give this information, or I'm going to lose this appointment that I've been waiting for 6 months for, or whatever it might be. Always feel free to call back the general number, and they will be able to direct you, because they keep very good records of every contact that they have with you.
Chris, do we have any closing slides? I guess Joan said we got about 4 minutes, 3 minutes now.
The rest of the slides were other initiatives.
Oh, yeah. I want to give you guys some great news, good news, okay? Change the subject a little bit. Like I had mentioned, I've been in this role for a long time, and someone was talking about the job that I have it can be really hard sometimes. In fact, I think that's why nobody runs against me, because it's a really hard job. And the way that I realize is that if I show up trying to make people happy, I'm going to be a bad county attorney. If I just show up and just do the right thing and recognize that sometimes people might be happy, sometimes they may not, but it's really a crazy thing to try to make everybody happy. What I got to focus on is making sure that our quality of justice in this town, in this community, is good, and that we have public safety. And the way that I get to public safety is working in collaboration with others. So collaborating with my community and listening to all of you about the things that are happening, working with the police, working with judges, working with defense attorneys, and thinking about solutions, right? And so one of the crazy things and scary things that was happening at the turn of the pandemic was that we were just faced with this violent crime that was happening. We had these carjackings, and we didn't even count carjackings before. It was, and these auto thefts were just getting out of hand. And we just started at the very beginning of the pandemic. What we were doing is we do, just because we're human, we tend to blame each other, right? So police would blame me, and then I would blame the judges, and that gets us really nowhere. And so instead, we started collaborating, and we started building out some solutions. And I wanted to just share with you around the carjacking and the auto thefts, how well we are doing in Ramsey County. We are going to get to a place, this is carjackings over here. Last year, we ended up with about 23 carjackings, but we used to be at about 100. We are going to get to a place where these are going to be like nothing. And it's because we're working in collaboration with police in our community. What we realize is that there's just a small number of kids that were doing these carjackings. So you know what we said? Let's go talk to them, and let's go talk to their families. And what we found out was that a lot of these, oftentimes single moms were just desperate for help. You know, it's not easy being a parent of a teenager. And so some of these kids, they got prosecuted. We sent them to Red Wing. But a lot of these kids, we were able to connect them to services and to therapy. And that group of 65 kids that we had kind of identified, we just did some really intensive intervention with them. And so these numbers, as you can see in St. Paul, and these were the kids that were also stealing the cars. But you know, this is 2023, but St. Paul had the most highest reduction in auto theft in the country. And in 2024, we repeated that. So we're doing a lot of great work. And again, it's just through collaboration. When you hear politicians blaming each other or not being a part of the solution, they're really doing a bad job. And instead, tell them to just be humble and start working with others and pull in the same direction, and things can change for the good. So it's been really my honor to work on these issues, these problems that we have for all of you, to make our world and community safer, and to ensure that what we do in the justice system is fair and just for all. Thanks so much.
Well, again, we thank both Chris and John for coming. We'll maybe have to have them come back and tell us a little more about the great stuff going on in their office. Maybe we could find a date to have them come back. Next Wednesday, we're having the presentation about the Carondelet Village geothermal system with our facilities manager here, the facilities manager of the Sisters, and Sister Margaret Bellinger will be on a panel talking about geothermal. So come back next Wednesday at 10:30. Thank you again, Chris and John.